All right, Dr. Maury with Uncivilized Vitality. We're going to talk about one of the 5 vital paths community today. Community number 1 is stories and rituals are vital. This one's a tough one to sum up in just a few minutes, but as an overview video of community number 1, think of human beings as being narrative animals. We tell ourselves stories constantly. That's just the way our brains are wired to work. And obviously, in Uncivilized Vitality, in our philosophical baseline, we're encouraging rationality and always trying to, if you look at our video, the 3 ways of thinking, we try to encourage you to think rationally and stay reasonable and set emotional thinking or affective thinking, reactive thinking aside and do rationality, right? So we try to do that. So then we talk about stories and rituals. Stories and rituals are sort of the opposite, or not the opposites. Think of it as the complementary to purely rational thinking. Right? Stories and rituals are vital because human beings are narrative animals. We tell each other stories, and we use rituals to enact stories, to come up with meanings and different ways to learn about our environment. There really is only one way to learn. The easiest way to, or the only way to learn, is by making mistakes. And when you make mistakes, you learn lessons from them. That's how you have to do it. Trial and error, learning on your own, watching and copying, or being taught, which is basically being presented a mistake or the results of different mistakes that you can learn from. So mistakes are the only way you can learn. The secret is they don't all have to be your mistakes. You can learn from the mistakes of others. That's why we tell each other stories, and we have myths and legends and cautionary tales and fables and such. So one of the ways to think about this is that right? There's a neurologic phenomenon called sparse coding, and this is the way your brain works, and this is why stories are so important. Sparse coding is using few discrete chunks of data to encapsulate larger patterns. So, for instance, the easiest one most people know are their ABCs, right? So you've got 26 letters, and from those 26 letters, those very discrete packets of 26 letters, you put those letters together in certain order. Like if I use this one, that one, and then a third, cat. So I get the sound and then cat, and I attach meaning to that particular sound, that word. And then the cat eats, and I attach meaning to those different words in that sentence. And then we have syntax and grammar, and then eventually we have stories. But it all comes back to in your brain, the sparse coding only puts in a few different letters, and you get all the sounds and words in the English language out of just those 26 characters, more or less. So sparse coding with learning larger lessons in life, or conveying more meaning that can be that needs to be conveyed not as easily as just strict logic or symbolic coding, would be stories, fables and myths and such, and we can get a lot of meaning across that way. A good example of this, or the one I like the most, those Aesop's fables, where he tells stories, and then at the end it has the moral of the story, or the thesis, and the lesson you're supposed to get from that. Like, what's a good one? Aesop's fable, like the fox and the sour grapes, right? The fox was walking along, and he sees some grapes, big juicy grapes growing up really high on a fence, and he tries to jump up and get them, and he can't reach them, so the fox wanders off, and he says, probably were sour anyway, right? And that the moral of that is sometimes we denigrate or try to dismiss the value of things that we couldn't attain or have. It's like having sour grapes about a situation. And that moral comes from that little fable, Aesop's fable. And we can get some meaning from that because of sparse coding. So a short little tale. There's some interesting literature out there about the sparse coding and the meaning of stories and rituals in comedy and humor and little jokes. And that's very interesting. But I was endeavoring to keep this video very small. I promised Logan I'd keep this one short, trying to stay under 6 minutes today. So that's going to be the end. Stories and rituals are vital to convey meaning amongst human beings because we're narrative animals, and we can think rationally and reasonably, and we should strive to do that most of the time. But one of the ways that our brain uses sparse coding is to deliver important information in fables or myths or rituals. So the more of those that you learn and understand, you can parse them down for their hidden meaning, or maybe not so hidden meaning, sometimes just their implied meaning, and get a lot of information out of that. And then when you think about the stories that you tell yourself, then you can get some meaning from that as well. So probably want to watch that again. That rambles a bit. You can unpack that meaning and then like the video if you enjoyed that. Subscribe to the channel, and then leave a comment, and then share, and all the other YouTube stuff. So see you next time.